Hey, what's going on? This is Dave Sharp, guys. Welcome to episode number 2 of the Legendary Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm stoked. I'm excited. Not only are we streaming this, guys, for you, obviously through audio, which you can access, and you're probably listening to it through Apple, iTunes, but we're also going to be streaming it live here on video. So if you guys want to watch the video, if you want to engage with the exercises, with some of the blueprints, with the downloads that we have available from not only episode number 1, but also episode number 2 in the first 5 episodes, which is going to be sort of a mini masterclass for you guys to go through. And by mini masterclass, I really am giving you in my experience, which take it for what it's worth. It's been $3 million companies, total sales of $160 million, and I have had lots of successes that were not only financial, but also through relationships and also through my health, but also lots of mistakes too. And a lot of those mistakes have been lessons that I'd like to pass on to you guys, and I will be over the course of this podcast. But these are going to be 5 essential insider secrets to building a multi-million-dollar business, to growing it, to starting it, to scaling it. And so you can find that on legendarypodcast.com. It's all free. When you're there, you can, again, watch the video. You can also engage with the downloads and the blueprints, and you can enter your email in to make sure you get notified whenever we release a new episode or have new free content and training or opportunities for you guys to come to an event or something like that. So let's jump into what I have for you here, because what I'm going to be sharing with you today is, and it's kind of funny because if you are watching the video, I'm a little bit of a pacer when I'm talking. If you've ever seen me in a live event, I'm not the guy who sits in the chair on stage and just sort of in a boring way talks to the crowd. I'm up, I'm engaging, I'm in the audience. It's just sort of kind of who I am as a communicator. And I think for those of you who are pacers, there's a lot of you who are in sales or marketing or you know, various different sort of high energy sports, I guess, if you will, because I do consider business a sport. You're up, you're pacing, you're walking, you're one of those guys or girls who's out by the pool or going for the walk, kind of walking, and I'm that same way too. So what I want to talk about in this episode is the power of story and how I've taken my story, which from a bird's eye perspective, my story has been a story of defeat, of struggle, of challenge, of having to endure issue after issue after issue. And from the outside looking in, if you were somebody who has watched my journey from about the age of 12 or 13, you would probably say, wow, that dude is destined to die, to go to prison, to, you know, end up a lifetime loser. And the cool thing is that everything that has happened in my life, all the challenges, the struggles, all the mistakes, all the failures, have actually prepared me for massive success. And so what I want to offer you today, as a up-and-coming entrepreneur, as somebody who's established, as somebody who's maybe already made some money, but who really hasn't began to take their story and use it in a powerful way, I want to offer you my experience into how I've taken all the things that have happened to me and turned them into not only motivation and inspiration for myself and others, but also cash and revenue for my business. Because at the end of the day, regardless of who you are or what century you were born in, there's one thing more powerful than anything, and that's story. And if you look at all the religions, if you look at all the great leaders, they've all led, even the great products and companies, they've all shared and sold through the power of story. And any human being or product or service that lacks that story, lacks that context, it lacks the emotion. And selling is a transference of emotions. It just is. It's me coming to the table and somebody else coming to the table, and whoever has the ability to convince the other person is typically the one who walks away with a sale. And either a sale is made or an excuse is bought of why that sale can't be made. And typically that's all. The currency between communication is always emotion. It just is. Now, I'm a guy who in ninth grade, dropped out of high school. I had my daughter when I was 16, and over the course of the next 8 years, struggled with running with the wrong crowds, hustling, getting in trouble, becoming an entrepreneur, just not really the kind of entrepreneur that mom and dad wanted me to grow up and be, until I realized that I was ruining my life in a sense. And in 2008, I found myself in a bathroom with a needle hanging out of my arm. I mean, that's the reality, and that's graphic. It's something that most entrepreneurs or business people might not talk about. They might try to sweep that under the rug. And I did for a long time. As a matter of fact, when I started to become a marketer and build my business, I was ashamed of who I was. I was ashamed of my journey. I was ashamed of everything that I'd been through. I was ashamed of the mistakes that I'd made. And I didn't want you to know who I actually really was. And so I got on videos and in my marketing messages and my emails and my social media stuff, I really tried to portray something that I wasn't. And there was this disconnect. And I didn't really realize it because I didn't have the self-awareness then that I have now. But the reason that I know there was a disconnect was because my business wasn't growing the way that I knew it could grow. And I knew that it really should grow. But I didn't realize that I wasn't making the emotional connection with people. I wasn't giving them a look into who I was authentically. I was just trying to put on this facade. I was just trying to, sort of give people what I wanted them to have, but keep what I didn't want them to know sort of hidden. And I don't know if you have felt, of course you felt like this, but if you can remember a time to where your built-in BS detector sort of just, the antenna went up and you said, this dude or this girl is not giving me the full story. And so that was what I was experiencing, and a lack of sales and a lack of momentum because of it. And so one day I was just I was ready to do something. I didn't know what I needed to do. And I was inspired by listening to somebody else talk about their real true struggles. And I got on my computer. At that time, it was, not a nice computer like what I have now. It was a old rinky-dink laptop. I actually borrowed my wife's credit card to buy. It was like $500. I got on the laptop. I did like a webinar, and I told people just who I was. I told them my past. I told them basically what I just told you, which was the true evolution of my life, how I went from broken and homeless and hopeless to now having this mission and dream. And I wasn't successful. I didn't have all the credibility. I didn't have the multi-million-dollar story, but I got on and I told people legitimately and authentically who I was. And at the end, it was like I was doing the webinar, and at the end, I just shut it off and I just closed my computer scared, terrified that people were gonna judge me and unsubscribe and stop following me and stop engaging. And what happened was actually the complete opposite. I actually made more sales from that webinar than I'd made, I believe, total in my business up until that point. And I'd been trying for, like a year or so, year and a half. And I was flabbergasted. I was blown away. I couldn't believe that me being so vulnerable and me opening up and letting people know who I was created that sort of connection with people and made them actually want to buy. I was like, wow, I understood maybe motivating people, but being able to use the power of story to do business was not something that I really understood yet. However, over the course of the next 2 or 3 years, that's all I did. And I still can admit this to this day. I'm not the most tech-savvy guy. I have a hard time still sometimes syncing all of my Apple devices. My calendars are messed up. I forget passwords. I've got a million different passwords, and somebody's going to email me and say, dude, use this tool, and I'm all game for that. But I'm just trying to illustrate the point that even to this day, my strength is not software, it's not systems, it's not technology. It's understanding the power of story, because over the next 2 or 3 years, what I did was I just focused on learning how to really tell my story in a powerful way. First of all, though, and this is what I want to offer you today as sort of a process to take you through to get you familiar with learning how to not only first get okay with your life, but also then learn to tell it in a way that is true to you. And understand that by telling your story and being authentic, I'm not particularly saying go out and just throw your drama and trauma and dirty laundry all out into the open with like no regard to anything, because you may end up doing more damage than good if you do that. So you have to approach this with some common sense. What I am telling you though is part of this process and part of the whole, I feel like, advantage that I had was that I had all this drama and trauma in my life, the drug addiction, the homelessness, the abuse, like all this stuff, and I actually began to get some help. So not only as I was telling it in my entrepreneurial career, I was also dealing and healing with it and from it in my personal life. And that's, I believe, the difference between doing personal development and personal growth work that's just sort of like surface level. I'm reading a book, I'm looking to try to gain some sort of an insight of how to be more influential, opposed to really digging deep and doing some of the personal development work to where I can break through some of these things. I mean, in events that I do around the country with entrepreneurs, and I've been doing these type of events for a while now, and we're doing them, of course, now as well. My hope is that I get to meet you at one in the near future, is we actually, one part of the process that we take people through is taking your story in different situations and really breaking through them, finding different techniques and developing technology that you can use to get not over them or around them and act like they don't exist, but like really leverage them. And so a lot of people walk away from our events, they come for some mechanical thing, like I'm going to learn this mechanical element of our business, of my business, and they walk away with this huge dynamic shift, able to leverage all their challenges and struggles in a way that's powerful and empowering to them, and then obviously motivational and profitable in their business. And so for me, I was growing, okay? So I'll say that. I was growing. I think that's important for you to understand, that as you're learning to tell your story, there's a part of personal growth that has to happen, because in order to tell something, you don't want to re-traumatize yourself. And by telling your story, I'm actually really challenging you to get vulnerable. I'm challenging you to get deep. I'm challenging you to realize that human beings connect more with you about your struggles than they do with the things that you're winning and your successes. Let me break that down. People really feel more connected when you share a struggle, when you share a pain, when you share something that you're going through and you open yourself up, than when you come and you say, hey, I just bought a new Rolls Royce or Range Rover, look at me, ballin'. People are like, he's kind of arrogant, like I don't really connect with that. I'm not saying that people are not inspired by that. I'm just saying that if you want to connect with people, the part of your story that's going to bring them in is that raw, vulnerable aspect of what you've been through, because there's something called identification that's one of the most powerful human emotions. It's that feeling of, wow, I can relate to this person. This person understands me. This person gets me. And so I started to heal and deal with some of the traumas from my past. I was doing it through recovery work. I was doing it through 12-step work. I was doing it through just this insatiable desire to want to be okay in my own skin. And I believe that a lot of the process of like really becoming a legendary entrepreneur, I mean somebody who's in the game playing chess, not checkers, somebody who's not just temporary, but somebody who's here for the long term, is learning all of the mechanical issues of your business, but also the dynamics of developing as a human being, which I circle back around to my point of me, the edge that I've had over the last 6 years, which has enabled me to do so much in so little time, is not because I'm a software master or I'm smarter than you or I'm anything. I can even communicate better than you. It's because I've gotten so connected with my past. I'm so inspired by all the failures that I've had. I believe they all happened for a freaking reason. I don't believe there was one single thing that happened in my life, from me being abused, from me, being a homeless, derelict drug addict, from me failing embarrassingly, from me being laughed at and criticized and dropping out of school and having my daughter when I was 16. I believe every single thing with unrelentless conviction happened for a reason. And if any of it hadn't have happened, I don't know if I would have turned out the way that I did. So that's the first part of this process, is really becoming okay with everything that's happened in your life. And my message to you, which regardless of whether you ever decide to really get good at telling your story, is that everything happened to you and for you to prepare you for massive success. And that is the difference maker for, I believe, a lot of successful and unsuccessful entrepreneurs, is that a lot of people are not being held back by the external systems and softwares and technologies, or the computer or the hardware or the equipment. It's what's going on inside that's holding them back. That is the difference between, in my opinion, being a temporary and a legendary entrepreneur, right? Being a legendary entrepreneur is, it's a feeling, it's a thought, it's a way of living. It's not letting anything stop you. It's a perspective about life and business, and everything happened for a reason, that you've been blessed with all your curses. And so for me, being able to look back at my life and look at it as a blessing has been the number one reason why I've been able to leverage all this emotion. I mean, right now, I'm like in the middle of my house just talking, recording this podcast. We're recording it via video too. For those who want to watch it, you can find it over at legendarypodcast.com. Okay? I'm unbelievably motivated right now. I'm passionate. Why? Because I'm talking about the things that have happened in my life, and I feel free from the self-made prison that I once used to live in, which was wanting to take all my past and sweep it under the carpet and not let you know who I really was. But that is not, I believe, in my heart of hearts, what embodies a real entrepreneur. I believe an entrepreneur has a desire, because I'm an entrepreneur and I have a desire to break free from the confinements of what the public and society thinks that I should do. I have this desire to break free from the trail that was blazed for me and go blaze my own trail. And I have a belief that my life has happened the way that it has, so I can go out and inspire and help and motivate others and use my gifts and wisdom and experience to make a positive impact on the world. Number two, how do I take all of that and communicate it powerfully? So there's lots of different storytelling experts and motivational speakers and speaking coaches and things of that nature. And quite frankly, I've gotten very little of that sort of professional certification for speaking and storytelling. I've had lots of mentors, lots of coaches. I believe wholeheartedly in hiring or getting around somebody who can mentor you in every area of your life, whether it be health, relationships. I've got coaches in every area. So for me, I've had a lot of that, but no like legitimate certification training on how to become a great storyteller. Quite frankly, for me, I was blessed with the opportunity back in 2008 to be introduced to 12-step programs in recovery, and I've sat in a lot of meetings, and I talk openly about this for a couple of reasons. Number one, because it's part of my life. It's real. It's what I've been through. Number two, if you are having a problem, don't be afraid to go ask for help. And so I sat around in these meetings and recovery programs. I've been in treatment, and I've had the pleasure of hearing some of the best storytellers in the world. And what I found is some of the best storytellers in the world are not actually the ones who talk about being a great storyteller. It's the people who are not even trying. It's the people who just are speaking from their heart about their experiences, and it really means something to them. And that's how I try to communicate. Not all one of my dirty little secrets is I'm not a big planner. Like, this podcast was not planned. I didn't sit here and, sketch out every little word. This is straight from the heart. And so I've had the ability and the true pleasure of being around storytellers who I've heard speak in various different venues and environments, whether it be for-profit or non-profit. And I've learned some strategies that I'd like to share with you that I think will allow you to become a more improved storyteller if you can learn to become okay and empowered by your life opposed to paralyzed by it. And one of those formulas is real simple. It goes just like this. It starts with what it was like, and then it moves into what happened and what it's like now. And so if you can take any segment of your life and you can use that formula, what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now, you will have a blueprint and a structure to be able to tell any story. Now, the way that you sort of formulate that and how you're creative with it is totally up to you. I mean, if you look at the best books and the best movies in Hollywood, the way that they structure those stories are not by saying, you know, he was a 13-year-old boy born in Mississippi. I mean, they walk you right into, she was laying dead on the floor in a pool of blood. So some of those more artistic elements and advanced ways of telling stories, you can sort of move into the more you begin to tell stories. However, that formula of what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now will get you started along the way. And quite frankly, I still follow that a lot to this day. There's also a formula, and I'm going to share these over on legendarypodcast.com. That brings you straight to our website. This is episode 2. You can find that and get the downloads. I'm going to also give you a structure, sort of an infographic that shows you pretty much the same storytelling structure that almost every Hollywood movie from Hunger Games to Braveheart uses to tell their story. And it starts out with a protagonist. The protagonist has a problem. He seeks to find a guide, right? The guide gives him a plan, and then he or she, the hero of the story, goes and carries out that plan and either fails or succeeds. And sometimes you don't always have to succeed. Have you ever watched a movie to where the person, you know, at the end, or the hero or one of the people that you loved died? Well, you can include some of that heartache and heartbreak in some of your stories and then bring it back to leaving it off on a high note by talking about something that was, you know, was a success for you. But using that blueprint along with what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now gives you a formula to be able to tell your story. Here's the last thing that I want to give you, because this is what I think almost everybody needs to do with their life. And not only is it healing, okay, but it's also effective, is take a timeline, take a piece of paper, you know, take a, and you can watch what I'm doing over here if you want to go watch the video on legendarypodcast.com, but take a timeline and map out your life. You know, what happened in 1983? You know, what was a defining moment that happened in 1982? And as you begin to, you know, write out these different moments in these different situations, you not only begin to see your life for what it is, but you also then begin to remember and be able to fill in the blanks of other things that happened inside of your life. And a lot of times, people come to me, they say, Dave, I don't have a story. You know, I'm not the rags to riches, from nothing to something type of story. And then the deeper we dive with them, the more we find out that sometimes their story is more interesting than even mine is. Here's the cool thing about stories. Nobody has a story like yours. They're all unique, right? And the most powerful and what we find out to be most profitable thing you could do is learn how to be yourself and really own your life, own your story in a way that's powerful, because then you can communicate it with conviction and confidence and transfer that emotion. Here's the last thing that I'll say before we end this episode, which again has been one of my favorite topics to speak on, and I could literally go 8 or 10 hours, 2 or 3 days on this. And at some of my workshops and experiential events, I do, to where I take people through understanding how to tell their story in a deeper fashion and then translate that into a message, right, that can move masses of people. Last thing I want to say is one of the main motivating factors that you might want to think about when you're learning and really doing the work to be okay with your life and really own the things that happened and then learn to turn that into a story is that people, when they're listening to you, are going to remember about 5 to 10% of actually what you say and about 90% of how you say it. So your ability to be able to harness your passion and your just that right from the gut, like that passion, that excitement, that purpose, that's what people are actually going to remember. And so when people come to an event with me and they see me speaking and they're able to interact inside of a live environment, I know that. I know that most of what somebody is going to remember is my presence, right? It's how I delivered my story. It's how I delivered what I wanted to say. And so if anything, let that be a motivation for you to consider of really moving in a direction of mastering this art, because it really is an art. It's not a science, it's an art of really doing the work to own your life and then learning how to tell it. Because when you do, what you'll be filled with is the purpose and passion that you deserve and that you were born with. And oftentimes society and living life sort of steals that and robs us, and then we eventually begin to give our power away through just being almost hypnotized by society to be negative and to disqualify our experiences and our wisdom. So what this will do on top of everything that I shared with you today is it will give you your power back in a way that I believe you never thought possible. And that power and that passion and that purpose that you get from really owning your life story and then beginning to communicate it powerfully will be worth more than money at the end of the day. All right, my friends, that's it for episode number 2. Hopefully you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed delivering this content for you. Quick reminders. You can find every episode, including this 5-part masterclass on the 5 essential insider secrets to starting, to growing, and scaling a multi-million-dollar business over on legendarypodcast.com. You can get the videos, you can get the audios, and you can also get the downloadable bonus blueprints that we have for each episode. This is amazing. I am so excited that we're doing this and on this journey together. This is something I've been planning for a long time. I'm having a blast doing it. So make sure that you leave us a comment, that you subscribe, that you do all the stuff that you're supposed to do over on iTunes if you're digging what we're doing over here. And I'm looking forward to seeing you on episode 3. Bye for now.